Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for a few more people to show up. All right, we're just going to wait about 30 more seconds and then we can all get started. Thanks so much. Okay. All right, so let's get started. Hi, everyone. So happy to see everyone here. And we'll just wait for everyone else to trickle in while we do our intros. Well, today's topic was highly requested, and I am super excited to do this deep dive with all of you into our manual inputs. So I know it can be a little bit daunting to fill these out, or sometimes they can be hard to find or overlooked. But manual inputs are super important to get an accurate score and understand your tasks and your scores a little deeper as well. So let's dive in. Many of you probably at this point already know me, but just to introduce myself for those who are new to these webinar series, I'm Jenny. I am a solutions specialist on the customer success side of TuMeke. I'm also a certified ergonomist. And my team on customer success is really dedicated to helping you feel confident with our software, really going into these deep dives like we are today to help you understand every nook and cranny and really utilize the software to help with your progress and your success. So I'm sure many of you here, as our current clients, already have your assigned customer success managers. Please reach out to us. We love when you do, and we love helping out in any way we can and thinking creatively to offer you that specialized and customized support. I also have Rachel McAdam from our marketing department here on this training. As usual, she'll be helping moderate and help with questions. Speaking of which, if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A box. We will get to them towards the end to answer all of them, and she'll answer whatever she is able to in terms of more on the technical side. We are also going to be recording this and sending slides out afterward. And we're also going to give you a little extra time at the very end to fill out a poll. So for those of you who can stay all the way to the end, please fill out that poll. It really helps us a lot and helps us determine what our next topics will be, how to best serve you guys. So please stick around if you can. I don't think we'll take up the whole hour today, but let's see where we go. All right, so on the agenda for today, we are basically going to first do a quick overview of the five main assessment types. So this training isn't really going to go super deep into each and every one of these assessment types, just more of a review. If you do need more help with that, we will probably do more webinars in the future. Just let us know, or you can always engage your customer success manager to help you out as well. We have a few resources to help you better understand each of them. Then we're going to go into why manual inputs are important and importantly, where to find them on the app. And then lastly, we're going to go, of course, the meat and bones of this webinar. We're going to go into a deep dive into each and every single one of these. I know we talk a lot about REBA, but this time we're going to go through each of the five. And I'll kind of show you a quick live demo on where to find everything. But I think the most important thing is just getting all the information on these slides. All right, so TuMeke does offer currently five and growing assessment types. I know we have more than that, but currently we just have our five main ones to focus on today. Just going over, really quickly what all of these mean. Again, if you want more of a deep dive, please let us know at some other time. We can make that happen for you. But in general, just as a refresher for everyone here, we have the REBA, RULA, NIOSH RSI and the Snook tables or Snook equations. So the first two are postural based. And again, for those of you who are unfamiliar, these are all industry approved ergonomic assessment types. Many of them have been around for decades and they've been, verified and researched and yeah, pretty much accepted by the ergonomics community. It's not something that we as TuMeke have made up. So we really use these as the backbone of the way that we evaluate your videos. And for many of you, you might already know that you can use multiple assessment types for each video. In fact, we encourage you to do so if it makes sense to. So this is me just kind of going through all of these really quick. So the REBA is our catch-all assessment. It's the rapid entire body assessment specifically for whole body tasks. You can imagine in the industrial space that accommodates most common tasks, both static and dynamic. And if you're, as long as you're using your body, chances are you can probably assess it with the REBA. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with the rest, REBA is always a great place to start. You also have the RULA. So this is the sister assessment to REBA, and it assesses mostly the upper limb. So any sort of upper body tasks. So any sort of like sitting statically or standing statically, like at an assembly line, not really using the legs. RULA would be a great bet for that. The next three are more activity based, so they can pair well with either the REBA and the RULA. The NIOSH, if you have any lifting tasks, the NIOSH is a great place to start there. It'll also pair very well with a REBA, and it will give you some recommendations on the upper weight limit and threshold and how your current weight compares against that using the index score. There's also the RSI, also known as the Revised Hand Strain or Revised Strain Index. And this focuses mostly on hand-based tasks. So you can imagine any sort of hand tool usage, screwdrivers, scissors, pinchers, and also just using your hands to do any tasks like sorting, manipulating, pinching, pulling, grasping, etc. And you'll get a risk score for each of those hands with the RSI. And then lastly, you have the Snook tables or equations, which are a little more modern. And that allows you to look at pushing and pulling, which are unique to Snook, also carrying over some distance. And then it has its own version of lifting and lowering. And you can always use both NIOSH and Snook lift and lower to just access slightly different information and formulas. But in general, Snook will look at the 75% threshold for the working population to safely assess a task. All right, so with these in mind, we can go into specifically more about the manual inputs. All right, so why are manual inputs important? So at TuMeke, we do pride ourselves in developing technology that can allow us to easily see the body and its joints in motion. And we're looking at a body performing tasks and what effect it has on the joints. So I know that this has drastically helped a lot of safety professionals quickly identify risk and even show workers on the spot how to make immediate improvements, right? It's so important to have that visual aspect and really see yourself reflected back on the screen with these really easy coordinated lines. But however, because we are simply relying on computer vision, which can erase a lot of barriers to doing these assessments and help them grow at scale. There are still a few limitations that we may need to add that just can't be picked up by video alone. So that's the main reason why we have manual inputs, and it can help us add more specific details to the job, which can affect the ultimate score. So some of the recurring inputs you'll see in these manual inputs will include like weight and load, right? Hard to see via just 2D video, any sort of force, especially for pushing and pulling, and any other task specifics like frequency, duration, etc. So really important that we get all of these in before we assess our final score. And this is just really quick how to find your manual input. Sometimes it can be buried under a few different layers of pages. So with this, in your video overview page, and I'll demo this live as well. Within your video overview page, you will see you can click on a specific video. It will bring you to what we call like the main specific video overview. And from there, you'll see all your different assessments. You can have multiple, but for each assessment, you'll have a button that says View Assessment Results. It's crucial that you click that. And for any new video that you've uploaded or haven't added manual inputs yet, you will see this dialog box and it will just simply remind you to review the manual inputs. By clicking that, you will get brought to, well, I'll show you the different pages, but this is where it'll also show up on the menu. So on the left-hand side, every assessment pretty much follows this exact menu. So regardless of if you're in Snook Tables or if you're on REBA, you'll always find manual inputs here under the Summary tab. All right, so let's get going. So we're going to start with the REBA. So as a reminder, this is a entire body assessment, really great at looking at movement and positioning, postures, and joints. Many of you may already be familiar with this, but let's take a look together. So with REBA, you'll see that they have, sorry, let me just look at my screen real quick. A few items here. The first one is going to be the force and the load. So pretty simple. You'll have 3 weight buckets. That's just how the REBA was designed originally. And you can see that again, if you have really, really heavy weight, REBA can be sort of a secondary assessment, but we would recommend the NIOSH or the Snook as well. It kind of maxes out over 22 pounds, and it's not going to make a difference between like 30 pounds versus 60 pounds, for example. But this is meant, again, to just look at a general idea of how much weight that is going on with the body, if any. If you don't have any weights, it's just they're not manipulating any object or carrying anything, you can just select under 11 pounds. The next one here is a little checkbox. It's asking about shock force, rapid buildup of force, or sudden exertion. So really what's interesting here is kind of thinking about it like speed and suddenness, right? Something that will require a jolt or a sudden impact or a quick and forceful movement. The idea here is that these movements can cause unprepared muscle activation. So it could be like high peak joint loading, which can reduce the ability to maintain neutral posture. So an example would be, let's say a worker catches a falling item, right? Or someone throws it at someone, like a box, or a part jams on a line and you have to really yank it to free it. Or let's say you're throwing your entire body weight into moving something out of its inertia, or you're, opening a really heavy door or object or something like that. Next, we have coupling. So you'll see coupling a few times here in other assessment types, but coupling basically refers to the quality of the handhold of your object that is being handled. So again, if you're not handling anything, just keep it at good. If something is being handled or lifted, you'll follow this sort of guide. So good would mean that there are handles or cutouts. This item is meant to be held, easy to hold, firm grasp or grip, sorry, hard to knock out of your hands, and you can hold it close to the body. Fair would mean that it would have no handles, but there's still a decent grip on the hand. So think about like a moving box, right? It may not have those cardboard cutout handles, but you'll have like your fingers are going to be able to flex around it, especially if it's not too large. Then you have pour, so a weaker hold here, maybe like open palms, maybe it's a bulky object or an awkward shape. So it would require like a hug carry or just using other parts of your body to hold it up. An unstable load or sharp edges, for example. And then unacceptable would be like a very unsafe load. So unstabilized, think about like maybe liquids or like barrels or bags of sand, right? Weak or non-existent grip, like requiring a lot of PPE, like thick, heavy gloves, definitely sharp edges here as well, or pinch grip, etc. And this one, REBA is interesting because there are 4 levels. It's sometimes can be, it's no hard and fast rule, but if you ever have any questions, you can always ask your CSM and we can give you some advice there. But in general, you kind of just go with your gut in terms of looking at a combination of like how heavy this is, right? The shape of the object, how the hands are holding the object, and maybe even asking the worker how this feels as well. All right. And then the next one, the next section here in the manual inputs will be the activity score. So this will be looking more at the nature of the task itself. So a good question for to ask is the worker doing this repeatedly for a long period of time or under slightly unstable conditions? So pretty straightforward. You have some check boxes here. So if one or more body parts is held for longer than 1 minute, it's static. You'll be holding this, if whether it's your arm or squatting down for a long period of time, over a minute, you would check that off. You also have repetition here. So this is classified as more than 4 times a minute. So think about like lifting tasks, right? If someone is repeatedly lifting something, whether it's on a conveyor, on the ground, onto a pallet, this is why we recommend taking about a minute's worth of video. But I understand too, if not, sometimes 30 seconds, they're doing already, two, three, four lifts. You can safely say that it is repetitive for the most part. Another way to also think about it would be to look at it over the period of 15 minutes or so and kind of an average, like will it average four or so lifts? But it's not a hard and fast rule. That's just something I had picked up on from other ergonomists. Sorry. And then the last section here is the large range change in posture or unstable base. So kind of similar to the chalk force, but a little different. Unpredictable load or task, maybe uneven floor that requires balance, or maybe something like a quick jump from like, very small crouched position or similar big changes in posture. So you can imagine not quite as common, but there in case you do have that use case and scenario. All right, so we are now moving on to RULA. And again, just as a refresher here, RULA is your upper limb assessment type, and it's really great for seated tasks or static standing tasks where the legs really aren't contributing as much to the task itself. So slightly different manual inputs here for RULA. We'll go through them. So the main one here are looking at forces involved. So somewhat similar to REBA, but it's divided up into arm load and force and leg. So in this case, with the arms, the buckets are slightly different, but only because the lowest one is 4 pounds. Then it goes from 4 to 22 pounds and over 22 pounds. You also can check off if there's a sudden exertion of force, very similar to what we discussed in the previous slide. And with the arms and legs separated, generally, I would say it's around the same if you're standing, for example. But if you're sitting, maybe the leg force would be much lower because you're not actually carrying the weight of the object on your legs. So that's where the two would differ. But it really would depend on, again, first asking, is this person seated, doing seated work or standing work? Next, you have the muscle use. So similarly divided up. You can see here that you just have basically two options, hold still or moves 4 times a minute. So that's your sort of repetitive score. Uh, Pretty straightforward there as well. Doesn't have to be hard and fast. It's okay if there are micro movements, but if there are distinct movements that do get repeated more than 4 times a minute, you would check that off. And then you also have one extra activity score checkpoint, which is that legs and feet are supported by the ground. So generally, again, I would say if you're seated, your legs are definitely supported. They're not dangling. And of course, if you're standing and there's adequate support there, one should hope, then you should be able to check that off. So pretty simple with the RULA. Next, we have the NIOSH Lifting Equation. So to refresh, this is really great for single unassisted lifts. Generally, there will be a distinct start and end of that lift, the origin and the destination, which can help you delineate, is this a good task to use a NIOSH on? So with this and the manual inputs, we have quite a few. So let's run through these together. This will be a little more on the bulkier side because there are lots of different factors with the NIOSH, which also makes it a very good assessment for evaluating lifts beyond just the posture itself. So we'll go through these one by one. Coupling again, hopefully at this point looks a little more familiar to you all. This time it's only three different buckets, so generally more or less the same. For good, we're looking for handles and cutouts. Again, this is lifting, so is this meant to be lifted easily to hold, easy to manage and hold? NIOSH also uses language like optimal container, so again, like easy to grasp with the body, can bring close to the body. It's not like doesn't require you to throw in really awkward posture, like completely outstretched arms or anything like that. Fair would be decent grip for the hands, fingers flexed at least 90 degrees or so. And then poor, any sort of like super bulky object, think like a giant trash bag with lots of different, bumps and all that. Poor or no grip at all in general. All right, and then the next section here, we'll look at more of like the nature of the lift. So the average load, this is specifically the load that the worker is manipulating right now or handling. So just the weight of the object. It says average. It depends. I mean, in general, I would say try to get it as specific as possible. With NIOSH, we don't do buckets, right? Like you saw in REBA. We want to keep it more specific because we're looking more closely at the lift itself. So even a few pounds difference can affect the score and the safety of the lift itself. So as much as you can, try to get the weight of the object. We have some people even have like scales on hand or a portable scale. I've even seen suggestions of like one of those like luggage lifts, right? Or something similar where it's like a suspension scale. And then, of course, if you're handling packages, oftentimes there's the weight printed on the package, especially if it's getting shipped. So very helpful to get that accurate score. But of course, in lieu of that, try to make your best guess for now, and then make a note to come back. Then you have frequency here, so it'll be number of lifts per minute. Again, this will have to be a little bit on the average side, but try your best to capture the task itself and figure out kind of like an average amount of lifts over potentially like a 10 to 15-minute duration. Then you're going to look at the lifting duration, and you have three options here: short, moderate, and long. And since this is actually a little complicated, I have a whole new slide after this one to kind of get really into it for those who want to get super specific. But in general, you can see that the words they pretty much like speak for themselves in terms of, the length of time you're actually performing this lift for, whether it's like a short amount of time, under an hour, or a full day's shift, like 8 hours, of course, with breaks. Then over here, you have the load constant. So I would say don't worry too much about this. I wouldn't change this without any organizational approval. Some of you who might be in international, different countries internationally might have a different standard, and that's why we put this here. But otherwise, 51 pounds is the weight that NIOSH has specified as kind of a threshold limit for an optimal lift. So for the most part, I would keep it just as that. Again, don't worry about this unless you have organizational approval. There's also a spot for you to add the subject height here, which is also inputted when you upload the video. So let's go into the lifting duration section, just giving you, for those who like to get really granular, for me, I like to get nerdy with this. So we looked into the literature, and for the duration score, for short, technically it should be 1 hour or less, but crucially, the recovery duration needs to be 1.2 times the work time. So that means that you have to rest this long before you pick up this hour shift again for it to be short. So an example would be a 45-minute lifting job will require a 54-minute recovery time period before you start that task again for another 45 minutes. Or you have to look at this cumulatively too. So if you have a 30-minute bout of work, then a 10-minute rest, but then 45 minutes after that rest, then you have to add those two lifting sessions together. So that's 75 minutes total. You would then go to moderate. So moderate is pretty good too if you're like on the fence, if it's like an hour, but you don't know how long they rest or if they only rest an hour. Moderate's a good bet, generally 1 to 2 hours of work duration. And the work recovery here would be zero point 0.3 times the amount of work. So 2 hours of work with at least 36 minutes of recovery time in between, or else it would go into the next bucket, which is long. So this is your standard kind of work day, 2 to 8 hours recovery duration as standard industrial rest allows. So 8 hours with morning, breakfast, afternoon, lunch breaks, etc. So hopefully that decodes a little bit of the duration score again for those of you who like to really get into the nitty gritty. Um, all right. Next, we have the hand strain index. So again, this is for specifically hand intensive work. You can use, hand tools, or you can use the hands themselves to separate and sort and, just move around and manipulate whatever the object is. And you can imagine too, this is a very specific assessment type. So it's going to be asking like the NIOSH, some specific manual inputs. Oh, I'm sorry about that. What I mean to say is it's capturing a lot of different inputs. And the manual one, the good news is you actually don't have a lot of manual inputs because TuMeke is using this beta mode to actually measure everything itself. So it's looking at like efforts per minute, efforts, length of time per effort. So even with those small micro movements, like if you're using a screwdriver, TuMeke is actually putting that into their model inputs, which is our automated inputs. That will be for another time as well. But the good news is for the RSI, you only have two main items to fill out for manual. The first one is your Borg scale. So this will help capture the risk beyond just the weight and the task. So any sort of like observed physical strain or something that's reported by the worker, we're looking at like perceived exertion. Now, of course, this can be kind of subjective, but this is an attempt to be more objective when it comes to evaluating the types of work and the amount of like the hardness of the toughness of the work that's being done. The Borg scale isn't just limited to RSI, it's used across a lot of different industries. So it's somewhat standardized, but of course, there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room. For that reason, we put them into 5 buckets instead of making it super granular at 10 different intervals. And this is a guide that I like to use generally. Again, it's not perfect, but it's a good, like a pretty good idea. So with 1 to 2, so sort of like minimal work, light work, no to low weight. You'll also see that the pictures will correspond to slight like facial indications as well, which can be a good clue, but is not the only way to assess this. Through 3 to 4, so some simple grasp and release tasks, or like low torque for hand tools. So maybe, screwing a nail in, but it's just quite easy, right? There's no resistance whatsoever. 5 to 6 will be like moderate use. So let's say it's taking a little while. I'm thinking about me putting like a bed frame together, right? Like if it's snagging on something, I gotta put a little more effort into it. Maybe some like repeated trigger pulls or pinching. 7 to 8 will be like forceful gripping, high torque tools and resistance, or any sort of manipulation of like tough or resistant materials. So maybe like you have to cut through something much harder. Again, the tools will also ideally reflect some of the durability of the materials and the toughness of what's being needed for this task. And then the last one is the 9 to 10, so maximum force effort, right? Again, that's the end point of that spectrum. So, possibly unstable tools, really, really strong effort. You're prying something, pinching, squeezing, using leverage. So again, this is all based on hands only. So this is hopefully like a helpful scale to help you generally quantify kind of physical exertion. Then you have the task duration. So this one, it doesn't come in buckets. You basically will just add it up throughout the day and figure out how many hours in the day are these hands working in this specific way. All right. So then next we have or lastly, we have our Snook tables or Snook equations, also known as the Liberty Mutual tables. So the equations now, they started off with tables because it would have different intervals of the different subsections of the population, both male and female, which is quite interesting. But now there's an update too, well, which makes the intervals a little more smooth instead of just like within the gaps of each line. So again, it's an equation now, but it's based off of the original tables. And it's looking specifically at designing for 75% of the population to have this be a safe task. Now, of course, that 75% is a baseline. Some people choose to go higher. Some people may want to go a little lower, even though that's not recommended. And of course, that will differ between male and female, which I'll explain a little bit as well. So the Snook tables do have quite a few manual assessments here. So let's go through them together. All right, so for table type, right up here, as mentioned before, we have five different types of options for your Snook equations. So that's push, pull, carry, lift, and lower. So you can imagine push and pull are going to be very similar or almost the same manual inputs. Lift and lower also, and then carry will be slightly different, but very similar to lift and lower. So you'll decide which table type you're using for each video. Then you'll see an option for male or female. So one thing to note here is that you're not necessarily putting in who the subject of that of the video is. Now, that is a great place to start. If there is a woman doing it, put in, female. If there's a man, you can put in male. One thing to note is that you may want to consider inputting female for a more universal task design. It's really good practice because 75% of the female population and capability for performing a safe task equals to about 90% of the male population. So, of the working population, that is. So, we have some people, depending again on your company policies, especially if you have a very diverse workplace and you know that there's different genders being represented here, it may be helpful to go for the 75% female, even if a male is doing it. But of course, the even better thing to do would be to get videos of all different demographics as much as possible, because you might have different anthropometric differences, behavioral differences, etc. But that's kind of where how you select these two. The next, for this is for push and pull. The next we'll ask about force. So for a push or a pull, you're going to have two separate distinct forces. One is initial, which is pushing this from a still state, right? From just without moving at all. So generally, it would be a little more of a push or more force. Then you have the sustained force, whatever it takes to keep it moving. And let's say if it's like initially a very sticky object to push, but then it gets easier, you'll have a bigger difference. If it's a heavy object to begin with, it may be very similar. Crucially here, you will need a force gauge or a dynamometer to get an accurate reading. So also very important. There are many out there for you to choose from, and we can discuss that if people are interested. But in general, that is one thing you do need you do need as an extra tool in your tool belt is that force gauge. And there are some that are quite simple to use. It's kind of operates like a weight scale, right? Like a freestanding weight scale. But then you have some really more high-tech ones that can really chart out the ranges of motion. It can remember certain things. It can find max forces so that you can get all that data, and that's what makes them kind of more expensive. So at the very beginning, you can try to use a basic one if you have a limited budget. But for those who do have more budget, I highly recommend one of the nicer force gauges. They'll last you for a long time, and it's a very good thing to have in the ergonomist toolkit. All right, and then after that, you have the horizontal distance of how far you're going to be pushing or pulling this thing. And then you have frequency per hour, so very similar again in terms of how often you're doing this task. And then you are asked about the subject height as well. All right, so then I'm going to look at the lift and lower and carry. I know there's a lot of information on these pages, so I hope that these slides are helpful. So with the lift, in the video, you'll be prompted to also select the start and end of the lift. So you'll have these little this little timeline here with these little endpoints, and you can just move them around to really select that, and it should reflect in the time markings here. Same thing, male or female, same principles apply. You have coupling again. So I think this marks the third, at least the third time that this coupling has shown up. So you will have three options here in particular for Snook: good handles, poor handles, or without handles. So a little easier, a little more straightforward. You'll be asked about the object weight, of course, then frequency per hour, and the subject height. Carry pretty much looks exactly like this. The only thing extra is the horizontal distance, of course, of how far you're carrying this object. All right, so we have made it to all five of them. I know that was a lot, but again, this is meant to be a quick overview, and you will have the slides as well to use as reference. We're really excited to be developing some of these in the future for your reference as well, but in the meantime, feel free to use the slides as a reference. But yeah, as a summary, every assessment type will have some manual inputs. Again, just because you're going to need some information that can't will purely be captured by video. So please make sure not to skip them. And what's also reassuring is I know even though there was a lot of information, a lot of red boxes and arrows today, the more you familiarize yourself with these basic inputs, the easier and faster it will get. I promise you. You'll be able to just do this with your eyes closed after some time. And manual inputs really, again, are important because it gives you that full accuracy of your score. You don't want just, some score that doesn't accurately reflect what's going on. So take time to actually get the most accurate inputs you can. And not only that, it's going to help you understand what you need to do next. When you go and engage our projects panel, for example, it's going to pull up some of those manual inputs, especially if they are driving the score up. So you'll know, like, oh, the load is very high, or there's a high activity score, and it'll help you find solutions more easily and more in a focused way to allow you to find those solutions in the future. So that's all I have for today. I wanted to now go into the question section. I haven't had a chance to look over these yet, so I'll do that now and then I'll try to answer all your questions. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's see, where will I access the questions here? I'm just trying to look for look for the toolbox here. Okay, I found it. Q&A. Okay, so we have someone who asks how to determine the worst possible posture and the maintenance times associated with REBA. So, yeah, really good question. So, REBA basically actually TuMeke has an algorithm that actually automatically finds that like worst posture, or like I would say kind of a posture to consider, or multiple postures if it's a slightly longer video. So in that case, uh, it actually will do that for you. Let me show you real quick while I have it here. I'm gonna go into videos and I'm gonna find a REBA here. Okay, so again, I meant to do a live demo. I apologize, but it was pretty simple. You can see what I did was I went into videos, then I went and found my video here. This is what we call the overview page. You'll have your assessments here. Many of them will be different. This is the view as assessment results button, and this is where you would access that menu and find the manual inputs. I know this is not specific about REBA, but a little quick hack while I have everyone here. There's a cool little like mountain range down here, if you can see slightly in gray on the timeline. These will indicate like spikes in activity during the video. So I can, here it's a little hard to see, but you can see here, this is where they would conceivably be squatting here. So it's like much higher activity, kind of lights up, right? But then as they finish that and go back, it kind of goes back down. So that's another great way to find where those spikes of activities are. Again, TuMeke will generally find it for you. And this is for another, time, but you will also be able to add your own as well. So it's kind of a combination of like generally higher scores, right? Like more body parts lit up, but also potentially something that can accurately represent the tasks in the video. If something's repeated frequently, there'll probably be a little more of consideration with that to determine your different postures and risky postures. So good question there. Um, all right, so we have a question in RULA. How do we calculate leg force and load? Right. So this one, because it's just like buckets, it's about like under 4 pounds, 4 to 22, then 22 plus. With leg force, for example, if you're sitting down, I would say generally, unless there's something straight up on your lap, then you could just put under 4 pounds. The legs aren't really holding anything. But if you are standing up and there's a load there, like your whatever the weight of the object is, it would just match the arm load as well. They're not adding together, it's just two different buckets to determine whether or not there's a difference between the arms and the legs. I hope that was helpful. Um, all right. Joanne asks, for the NIOSH, what if the process slash employee has multiple lifts? Yeah, if there is there a way to evaluate lifts if they're doing three? Great question. We are looking into cumulative lifts. That is coming, I believe. For the time being, unfortunately, it is about having to separate out the lifts. People have done this in different ways. Let me just show you real quick. But unfortunately, there's no like quick way to get all the lists together. I would maybe recommend like having a spreadsheet and filling these out manually. But in this case, I'm just going to move the Q&A box here. You would update the lifting range. There's one here. You would get the score, and then he's going to go for another one, I think. Yeah, you see, there's a different one. So I know it's not the best solution here, but then you would change this to the next one and you can see as we do this, grab, put here, update lifting range. This was up 8.86. It's going to go and you should get like a different score here. So there's no current way to save that, but we have had users just like put it in a separate spreadsheet. But I know from the engineers that we are looking into cumulative lifts. So thank you for asking. And it's good for us to move that up in our priority list too. Nicole, hi. For frequency, can you use a decimal point? Okay, for example, if the lift occurs every 4 minutes, could you enter 0.25 times per minute? So another great question. I believe that's going to be for like the NIOSH. I think 0.25 is the lowest you can go. So great job about that. Great job like highlighting that. And that would be like, yeah, one every 4 minutes. I don't think it'll go lower than that, I believe. So, yeah, that will save as such. Maybe. I mean, here's the thing. You can input it, but basically, that's the first rung. If you look at the NIOSH worksheet, each of these answers will correspond to a multiplier, and that multiplier will zero out at some point in a good way. Like if it's, very, very infrequent, you'll get like a one, which is the best multiplier you can get for this frequency. I hope that helped. But yes, thank you. Deborah says, so is TuMeke's Liberty Mutual based on the new equations or the old tables? Yeah, I do apologize for using them interchangeably. It is based on the new equations. Yes. It's just sometimes on the app, it'll say tables, but they've been updated for the equations, and we'll make a note of that to make it a little more easy to understand as well. Thanks. Um, Anonymous says, if RULA is related to upper limb, why is there a question in it related to legs? Yeah, also a good question. I think RULA will focus more on the upper limbs, but ultimately, you still got legs attached to the body, so it just wants to make sure that there are a few, like you have a solid base, for example, so legs and feet are supported, even if you're not looking specifically at the leg score. Um, It's because when you sit down also, REBA will tend to ding you for having bent legs, even if you're sitting, just because it's looking at that joint angle and it doesn't know you're sitting, right? And that's the REBA. So part of why RULA was created was because it didn't want to use that as information to lower your score unnecessarily. So there's still like some legs involved, and again, if you're standing, it's still looking at the potential distribution of weight on your legs, but it's just not assigning a score to them. And that's why the REBA is like 1 to 15 max in the scoring, and RULA is 1 to 7 max for a score. Okay. Is there a way to account the weight for pushing and pulling an object on wheels? Um, I think the Snook assumes oftentimes it's on wheels, just because when it's sustained, it's that one score. You're not like, because I'm assuming if like I'm pushing a box across the floor, it might be a little more jumpy. So I think it's meant to, like, the force gauge should be able to measure like somewhat any sort of friction, right? So I imagine that the force you needed to push something on wheels, and different casters too might be really old casters or really, really nice high-tech casters, will be reflected in that sustained force as you're pushing. So I hope that answers it as well. It should, I think, with the force gauge. But great question. All right. The new NIOSH equation includes additional factors for duration and distance. Was this considered in its development? Okay, so I will raise that to our dev team and we'll take a look as well. I think they were just kind of using the revised NIOSH equation, but we will look more into if there is a duration and distance. But so that's helpful, but thank you. I know when there's distance involved, it would be more of like a carry, which is why we kind of designed this or pulled in the Snook equations. But yeah, great point, and I will make a note of it to ask and see if that's in development as well. All right, perhaps a bit off topic. Are there plans to develop AI recommendations for the hand strain development? Great question, and not off topic. Oh, it's still great. We have open questions here. I know, so for the person who asked this question, for the rest of you on the call, under each of these the menu for the assessments, there's an actions button, and for RULA and REBA, there's a section that allows you to get AI recommendations and it'll write a report for you. That's another one of our hidden features that we highlighted in a previous webinar. But now what's really exciting is when you use projects, you're going to be able to access recommendations for all of your assessment types. So you can see here, hand strain. Let me just try to find one assessment version. Okay, that has all the hand strain. Let's see. I'm going to try to, oh, it's already pre-selected. Sorry, I have to move this around too. Well, either way, now you can do it with RSI, NIOSH, etc. So here's a hand strain. So if I click this, basically any video in your library now, if you go into the project section, which we can discuss at a later date, you will be able to get this AI recommendations solution. This will allow you to generate, yeah, pretty much the same recommendations you get with the report, only now it's in tile view. And for those of you who don't know about projects, it's basically our project management tool for exploring solutions and improvements. And it basically creates a before and after page for each of these tasks that you singled out to actually take action on, which is great. It helps you track what's in the pipeline, what you're about to do, what you've done in the past. It helps you compare the two. And this section right here is where you would get recommendations and then actually take action on it. So I really like that as well. So in here, you can see there's short term, intermediate, and long term. As you click into it, you'll get your recommendations. It'll have your problems here, some of which, as you can see, are part of the manual inputs, like the task duration, for example, that's driving the score up. So you have intervals here to play with. You really are able to figure out, like, let me see, apply here, and figure out what's the best solution for this particular task and explore different options here. And you can get like the live score updates as you do that. And that's all based off of the equations and the worksheets for each of these different assessment types. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but this is a great way, even if you don't end up going through with this, even though we do recommend it, this is the kind of like the playground for you to explore different AI recommendations. So yeah, glad you asked. Um, and again, this will also apply to Snook and NIOSH. Does the program come with a checklist to gather data prior to videos taken? Not currently, but I think we've been mentioning them a few times during our trainings and our webinars. So I think that actually would be a pretty good idea. We're working on building our resources and it's only going to continue to grow. So that's a really great, I think, a really great idea. And I'm personally looking to maybe developing more of a checklist in terms of, yeah, like more information and context for that video before. Whether it's before or during or after the video is taken too. So yeah, good point there. Tim says, if you want to do both a REBA and RULA or any combination of two or more assessments, do you have to upload the video multiple times for each analysis? So actually, no. That's the really nice thing about TuMeke is you can use that same video and you can go in and actually get add more. So if you have a NIOSH here, you can see this is where you would have multiple different assessments, and you would just press add assessment and select your assessment type. The only assessment that you can't do after the fact is the hand strain. So if you know you have to do a hand strain, definitely do that upon upload. It can't be added after the fact, but the rest of the four are able to run another assessment on. All right. Krista asks, will you be considering adding the height of the worker to the other assessment types? Would be helpful if the solutions consider that where the worker is in height range, tall person may not work or even cause more issues for a short person. So for most of the task-based assessments, I believe, well, for NIOSH and Snook for sure, you will have the worker height. Especially for Snook with the pushing, because it's going to look a little bit at the hand heights and all of that as well. We do get this question in terms of like nuances when it comes to worker height. And I would say the one thing you could do is do a REBA or a RULA, but mostly REBA, and get like a different slice of your worker demographic. We always say best practice isn't just to take one video of one worker doing something and calling a day. Best practice is getting like three different people or maybe different shifts, even can add some insight to the task that you're trying to evaluate. So REBA is really good at sort of capturing some potential differences when it comes to worker height in particular and other anthropometric differences, whether that's reach distance or overhead lifts. So as a short person myself, I know that would be my position and posture will be very different from a taller worker. And what I love about REBA is that it really can show that, right? And it's reflected in the joint angles and other ways that we compensate for either being too tall for the job or too short or whatnot. So yeah, I would say keep using the REBA in order to get those differences. And you can also request like a review with an ergonomist through your CSM, and we can look at it together too and come up with a strategy or way to log all of this information. Great questions, by the way, everyone. I know we have a few more to get through. Alejandra says, how can I obtain the composite lifting index using NIOSH? So yeah, it's in development, but really great to know that you're interested in this. I'll make a note of it that multiple people are, and I will personally try to figure out when that will happen. It's going to be probably next year, but good to know. And I do think we are due for it as well. And thank you all for your patience on the waiting for the cumulative. Um, Anonymous says for the RULA, where it has legs supported by the ground, if they're on a platform or ladder, is that not considered supported by the ground? Ooh, great question. I think a ladder, maybe not, honestly. It's a little unstable. I think there's a checkbox for that reason. Otherwise, if you're standing and not supported, I think that would fall under that bucket of a scenario of not solidly supported. Um, and then platform, if it's a stable platform, like it's just like a stage, let's say, then I think it should be okay to say it's supported. It just depends on the nature of it. Like, are there slats? Like, could they fall off of it? I guess what you're saying, yeah, like the platform. That's a really good question. So yeah, I'll look into that. But I think it's kind of your choice. It won't make a huge difference on the score itself. It may take away a few points here and there, but as a safety rule, like if it doesn't seem as safe or you feel like, they're not able to do their job as effectively if they were on whatever they were versus the ground, then that's something to consider as well. Even if you check or not, or no, don't check that box. It's a just something again to think about when you're designing a solution too. I hope that helps a little bit. All right. How much does manual input affect the risk multiplier compared to the video itself? So it will vary depending on each of these assessment types. I didn't get super into it today because I know it's a lot of information, but each of these videos or assessments will generally have a corresponding worksheet. And for example, you can look at the NIOSH worksheet and it's going to give you all the different multipliers. And if you really get into it, it's quite fascinating to understand how everything affects what. I know, for example, the REBA, the activity score, all are 1 point each. So if it's repetitive, whatever your final score is, your semifinal score, you have to add each of those after the fact. The difference is, like, let's say you have other risky factors. It may not necessarily add a full point to your final score. It may be good for your sub scores or add points to your sub scores, but I know activity scores such as static or repetition, right? They're kind of a multiplier that would add a full point. So it's helpful to kind of go through each of these worksheets and look at where each of those manual assessments correspond to each worksheet and then yeah, see how it affects each of these. But yeah, good question. Brent asks, when performing a NIOSH lifting assessment and the person picks in one spot but makes a half turn, oh, how do I not end up with a 135-degree asymmetry? So yeah, the asymmetry angle is a little more like beta mode, work in progress. I would say it's sometimes accurate, but depending on the video itself. And I know, Brent, I owe you an answer on the email, so I'll do that soon. But yeah, we will. It's good for asymmetry, it's good to double check. And you could also play back the video yourself. Ideally, you want to see the feet, right? Because the feet can also make a difference. So yeah, we can explore that and we can look at some of those videos together if needed. But good question. Asymmetry, the one just for everybody else on this call. It's not a manual assessment. It's a model one, a model input. Sorry, not a manual input. And that's what the camera picks up on. But model is also really good to review as well. So that's where the asymmetry comes in. But we will correspond as well. But thank you for bringing that up. Erica says, is the force and load in REBA the weight of the object being lifted or the pounds of force being used? Okay, for example, you have jobs where operators have to manual install clips. I measure the force using a gauge. Yes, should I be estimating the weight of the object or the pounds of force? Great question. I generally, because it's in buckets, it's not super accurate with Reba. I usually like to think about it as pounds of force being used. What's the most like direct to the body itself? So if they're, I don't know quite like much about the clips that they're being used here, but if they're like pushing something in, I would definitely use that because that also takes into account the weight of the object, but it's a much more sophisticated input, I guess, because it actually measures the actual force that the body is putting in. So great question. That's an amazing question. And I will modify that in my slides to ensure that that's more clear. Thank you, though. Oh, and also, I know we're coming up on time. For those of you who are still waiting for me to answer your question, thanks for your patience. They keep growing. But if you need to hop, we're recording this. So if your question didn't get answered before you had to go, I'll answer all of these. Yeah, and I think maybe Rachel will also put like a poll up at some point. Feel free to do that poll as I'm answering that question, answering these questions too. Okay, Anonymous says, does it matter to what aspect you're taking the video, front, back, and all? Okay, so more like the positioning. We do recommend a combination between front and side if possible, because that's going to allow you to capture the most rich data, so to say. You could shoot from the back, and TuMeke should be able to at least assign some joint overlay, but there might be some missing data, right? Because if someone's working or manipulating something in front of them, you may not get the full picture if their hands are being blocked by their back. So just something to consider. But any angle should be able to go through with some data. But then, again, front to side is slightly better and more recommended if possible. We know it's not always possible in tight spaces and restricted areas. Following up on the question about multiple lifts, is the only way to calculate them into the total risk by doing the manual tracking on an Excel sheet? Oh, okay. Or can we add multiple NIOSH assessments of that same video? So yes, the other way you can do this, I know there's a survey. Thanks, Rachel. The other way you can do this is you can add another assessment and put a NIOSH in, and you can do lift number two. And even better is you can even create a clip, but I think you're only limited to 3 clips here. So once you go into this and create a new NIOSH, I won't do it here just for sake of time. Um, you'll be able to uh, change the start and stop. So it would be a completely separate lift. So yeah, great question. And then you would have like NIOSH lift one, NIOSH lift two, NIOSH lift three, and it would all show up in this area, the video overview page. So yeah, thank you for asking. And that's a good question. And for those of you who are interested, please engage your CSMs and we can walk through that with you, like specifically. When you add an assessment, does that count from your total allocated assessment totals? Great question. I believe it does. It's not, I think it's evaluating assessments and not particularly videos. So something to consider as well. But if you ever do need, like if you're coming up on totals and whatnot, please engage your CSM or your account executive and we can work with you to see what we can do together. Because we want you to not have to hold back and like think too much about it. If you do need it, that's something we can work out together too. So yeah, thanks for asking. All right, Maria, why when I generate the worksheet does it sometimes not give me recommendations in NIOSH? So NIOSH doesn't have the button under the Actions tab. Here, I'll kind of demonstrate what I mean by that. Um, You've got the actions tab and it's not here. So when you generate a worksheet or a report, it's not going to have those notes in there. That's just how it is right now. I'm going to look into whether or not we're going to put that in. But for recommendations, I would go through projects and find a NIOSH there and then be able to get your recommendations that way for now. Yeah, thank you. Anonymous is what is the maximum video size that can be uploaded to the system? Great question. I believe it is a little different. I think with the phone, it's 2 gigs. With the computer, it's like 500 megabytes. For those of you who have issues uploading, I think there are free compressor like sites. You can just Google it, but of course, talk to your IT people first to make sure it's safe. But yeah, sometimes now with cameras, they take up a lot of the phone. The videos are like 4K. So a good tip is to not shoot in 4K if you can. We're gonna downsample it down to like 480p anyway. So if it's too large, then you can try downsampling first or compressing before uploading. But yeah, I think it's 500 megabytes on the computer. And then you can also try the phone if the computer's not letting you upload. Anonymous says, we've got two more. Anonymous says, thanks all of you who are still here. The system solves the simple, complex variable or sequential NIOSH index. I will look. I don't think I'm assuming just because it's a pretty simple equation. I will look into it though, but thank you for asking. If you want to check you can go into the NIOSH and you'll have the worksheet. So whatever like specific equation you're referring to, you can look and see which one matches it. I don't know if we know the exact like if it's simple or what the exact name is, but yeah, this is how you can look. Okay, I won't generate the worksheet. I know we're running over time, but that's how you would go and and it'll show you all the work that's been done and what those multipliers are. Awesome. Last question. Duvindu, how can we measure push and pull kind of force put by the operator? So basically, as mentioned, we recommend a force gauge. Those are just like an instrument that will look at how much force is being applied. And there's ones that fit in your palm, and there's ones with different attachments for pulling and pushing. Pushing is a little harder, which is why it's the one that, that fits into your palm is a little easier, but it will unfortunately require a little like a separate tool beyond TuMeke and your phone and whatnot. But I think it's a good one to have in your toolbox if you have a lot of push and pull. Um, and I think some people have made it work with weight scales, like the luggage scales, but it's not as accurate. But it's good to at least get a general sense if you're short on budget or whatnot. But yeah, thank you. All right, everyone, we got through all of it. Thank you so much again for for sticking around. I know we're a little over. Yeah, I really appreciate all of you who stuck around to also answer the polls. This helps us a lot. And yeah, we will see you in the next one. Really excited to roll out another one. There should be one next month, and then we should have one every month or so. So we really appreciate your input and your time and all of your really involved and focused questions. It's really great to see that people are really into this. So appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care. Bye.